Welcome to the Bulletproof Cashflow podcast, the go-to place to gain financial freedom through real estate investing. Here we interview investors, mentors, and entrepreneurs who share their secrets and advice to help you build passive income. Let's get into the show.
Hey everyone, this is Augustino. Scaling your real estate business is hard work. However, if you define the end game, learn how to grow a business extremely quickly, and overcome cash constraints creatively, you can grow your real estate business. It all comes down to not only sourcing deals and keeping your pipeline full, but also making sure your team of lenders, equity partners, and property managers are on board with the vision and they're ready to execute. Well, today's guest is not new to multifamily or this concept. Prior to a shift to multifamily, he got a start in the single family world as a home builder. Then he shifted to fix and flips. And then from there, he developed an acquisitions team, rehab crews, systems and processes to maximize the efficiency of his team and his business. Now today, as the president of Petrick Property Group, he is focused on multifamily acquisitions, and he uses what he learns running construction crews and applies it to multifamily. He used this experience to not only run his business to support this massive growth, growing it to 28 million in deal closed and under contract, but he also goes out and raises capital for these assets. Now, with all that, I'd like to welcome Jack Petrick to the show. Hey, Jack, thanks for coming on. I appreciate it, man.
Hey, thank you for having me again. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. So before we go on, if you like what Jack has to say, check out the company website at petrickpropertygroup.com. And of course, if you like our content, please don't forget to leave a comment and rate the show. So, Jack, give us an update as to what you've been working on since we last spoke.
Yeah, so when we made the transition from single family to multifamily, it was a challenge of finding deal flow. And we essentially have solved that by just putting a lot of energy, a lot of effort into that. We brought in a team member full-time for looking for off-market deal flow. We've also spent a lot of time in establishing relationships with brokers. I think, Phil, so many times we don't put the proper amount of time into building those relationships. If we were looking to court or to date our wife or husband or whatever the case is, it wouldn't just be I'm in for it for my needs and my wants. It's about what can I provide to you? Let's build a friendship. Let's prove trust and build trust. And from there, it opens up a lot of opportunities. So we've been putting a lot of effort in finding deal flow. And we actually have 407 apartment units in the Cleveland market that we either have under contract or are just about to enter under contract the next couple of days. It's actually 5 separate deals that we got right now.
That's awesome. And that's the thing about this market right now, because I'm also active in the Cleveland market, is that deal flow is super, super tight. So yes, let's talk about that first. How to actually get these deals in the first place. I mean, getting deals is hard enough. Scaling is part of it too. How'd you develop those relationships, and how'd you get those deals in a contract? How'd you get them locked up?
Yeah, so we've picked up deals either on market or off market. So off market, there was one property we picked up because there was actually a for rent sign outside. So we got the phone number, we called on it. I expressed I wasn't interested in renting, but I was looking to buy, and the owner was at the right time. See, in our market, in the Cleveland market, the average holding time is about 28 years. That somebody will hold a property for. They own the property, the mortgage gets paid off, and then the property is cash flowing well. And they have to get to a point in their life where it's a burden or a challenge. They have to liquidate an estate or some reason that results in them wanting to sell, some life event. So consistency of following up with people is absolutely critical on that. There's a sales statistic that shows how many sales are closed with 1 call, 2 call, 5, 8. And most deals are closed, most sales are closed between 6 to 12 points of contact. So if we don't hear back, if we're not getting results, we got to consistently follow through with it. So that I actually had to follow up for 14 months with that individual before we were able to get that deal closed. I actually hired somebody on full time for acquisitions, and we were just calling off market properties. It took us 477 hours to put a 19-unit building under contract. Amazing deal. And then that opened up to some others. And then in doing so, that showed a lot more activity to our local brokers. At the same time, I was trying to build and foster those relationships. Returning phone calls, returning emails, showing up, doing what we say we're going to do. And that's the thing. I think you could eliminate 90% of the competition if we just did what we say we were going to do, because so many people don't do that today.
I know, it's have integrity.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And what you just said too, will work in just about any market. I mean, you look for a for rent sign, start following up, start making the phone calls, because you never know at what point they are in their life. They may just be, just like you said, they've held on to it. They've had enough.
Yes.
Maybe they're having some marital problems. Maybe there's a death in the family. Who knows? You never know, right? But that constant follow-up is totally worth it.
Exactly. Because we're typically buying for one or two different individuals, either full-time professionals that do this. Well, three types. That's one type. Another type are successful entrepreneurs that have a high W-2 income, physicians, attorneys, entrepreneurs, and they think they can invest in multifamily and it's just going to be mailbox money if they hire a third-party property management. And so often the times, the wrong third-party management at the wrong property in the wrong market, it's just a disastrous result. So they get to a point they're fed up, they want to be done with it. And then the third option is just mom and pop owners. They do everything themselves. They cut the grass, they shovel the walkways, they repair the boilers, they do everything. But they get at an age in life where they're just sick and tired of doing that, and they just want to cash out and just be done. Oftentimes, it's pretty common in multifamily for partnerships to buy properties together. And for some reason, those partnerships go bad. I think we've talked about this before, but partnerships are like marriages. Half the time they're amazing, half the time it's a divorce. So it's 50-50 whether or not those partnerships last. And when that happens, that's a motivation to sell those properties.
Yes. I have a rule about that too. It's like when you have a partnership, you're all in on that partnership.
Yep.
No matter what. You have to make that partnership work, because if you're at odds, it's just bad. It takes a lot of work to run any partnership, whether a marriage or a business partnership, right? That's the thing.
Yeah, 100%. A lot of compatibility pieces. Like there's an amazing book called Rocket Fuel, and it's basically the relationship of the integrator and also the visionary. And if we look at those relationships, it's like the combination, the partnership, the marriage of Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs. It's Walt Disney and Roy Disney. They had yin and a yang. They really did an amazing job of filling each other's gap. And when you have a partnership where you have that in the communication and the integrity is a huge piece that often sometimes gets overlooked until it's the piece that dissolves everything.
Yes. Yeah. And it's funny. I was actually talking to a coaching student just yesterday, telling him about this, that getting into this business is, it's not easy, but the way you accelerate it is through partnerships, because not only can they get you in front of the right people, but they can also help guide you through and help you take down that deal. Yeah. Okay. So you end up, instead of 100% of the GP, now you have 50.
Sure.
It's okay. It's all right. You get that experience, right? So that's huge.
Exactly. And speaking of partnerships, a partnership that we're always deploying in every one of our deals is our private lenders. And the reason that this relationship works when you have the right people is it allows people that have retirement funds or money on the side to be able to invest into deals that we're doing. So if you don't mind, do you mind if I share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay, yeah, no, that'd be great. I appreciate it. So like right now, for me to actively build our business, it is a ton of work. So a lot of times when we'll talk to our investing partners and we'll ask if they want to come on board and work with us, it provides a lot of benefits. First of all, they can work side by side with us and learn the business. So they're partnering their capital, they're making a much higher rate of return into an asset class that's a very safe asset class, but they also get the piece where they get to be mentored in the process, because it's the best way to get involved. If you look at anybody that's excelled at sports, LeBron James, football, baseball, basketball, they've been mentored by, how many separate individuals through life. Pee-wee all the way up to middle school, high school, college. Like there's this constant, mentoring program. And to have the best success in this business, it is best to be able to partner up, maybe even first with an active operator, to learn the business and how we find deals, deal flow, how we close them, what do we do during due diligence? How do we set the expectations for contractors? How do we find contractors? How do we set the pricing? How do we hold the projects in budget? How do we handle that releasing process when we're transitioning? And ultimately, how do we evaluate properties? What decisions do we make to ensure that investors not only get a return on their capital, but get return of their capital? And it's just when anybody goes into a new venture, no matter how much we do to educate ourselves, we don't know what we don't know. And it just really makes that transition a lot easier if you can mentor somebody. And oftentimes people that actually end up investing with us, once they see the amount of work that goes involved in this, they realize that it may not be for them, because the both of us could both attest to this. This is not a one-man show.
No.
I personally have 13 individuals on my team, from acquisition, my COO, assistants, property managers, leasing agents, project manager, all of our crews. And like, it's a huge team. It's a huge undertaking.
And that's just to run it.
Yes.
Acquiring, and it's funny because I often point that out too. Getting deals these days is hard enough as it is.
Yes.
There's always, right after you sign the contract, you get everything closed, everybody's popping champagne corks. Great, you close the deal. Now you got to run it for 10 years and deliver returns every single time.
Absolutely.
It's not easy to do. It's all right. Yeah.
Exactly. And so oftentimes people will want to, when I sit down with new investors for the first time, there's lots of questions, and they're great questions. So I might wanted to talk about some of those, and just to kind of just help educate your listeners as far as things that you should be asking and also considering. So people oftentimes will look at it and want to know, what's the risk? What are the concerns? What could go bad? Which they should be asking. There's a lot that can go right, but if I can get past the objections first, it makes the upside so much sweeter. So the number one biggest risk that somebody has is the operator, which is us. And that comes down to our integrity, our values, or our morals. Because if we have that, we will always do the right thing. When I have capital that comes into a deal for my investors, I treat that capital as if it's my own personal money. I have never lost capital for an investor. I've lost money in deals, but I've taken money out of my pocket to make those investors whole, because that's the right thing to do. So that piece is something you cannot compromise on, no matter how good the deal seems. If you've met that person for the first time, the best way to find out about that is to get references. Go further, do a background check of that individual and look deeper into their past. If they've exhibited their entire lifetime of character, morals, values, their credit score is high, there's no undisclosed bankruptcies or foreclosures or things of that nature, chances are you're pretty much on a good track. If somebody does have a hiccup like that in their past, they disclose it. There's a reason. There's an answer for it. That's not to disqualify them. But if they're not disclosing that and you're finding out and you're seeing a track record of things, I would really be leery at that decision. And then, secondly, I would also look further into what's their experience. How many deals have they done? What's their background? Do they have a lot of experience raising capital? Is their experience more on the construction aspect of it? Or is their experience more on the operations and management of that project? Because you need all three of it. And if they don't, or if they happen to be weak in one area, then they should be able to offset it with other partners to fill all those pieces. So those are the biggest risks that you look at when you do a deal. Once you get past that point, the third criteria is the deal itself. Because most people are not so much concerned about the deal, they're more concerned about the people that are involved. So again, we're looking at the integrity piece first. Second piece, the experience. Third piece is going to be the deal. And the deals that we raise capital for are deals that allow us to go into the properties, increase the revenue streams of the property, and then to be able to refinance those projects in 2 years or less and return all capital to investors. And those are just the deals that we pursue. Because I've got a heavy focus on finding distressed properties, because I have a background of building houses and remodeling and flips, we use that skill set that I have to be able to take those properties that are more challenging, physically remodel them, start off with a fully remodeled property. And when we have a nicer property, we can have much higher rents. Higher rents equal higher net operating income, which ultimately results in a higher value of the property, not because of appreciation of the market, but because the property generates more cash.
Excellent. So aside from that, what other questions do you get from investors, like as far as maybe tax benefits or returns or anything else like that? What do you get from them from that?
Absolutely. So what they'll ask oftentimes is, once you get past that point, is trying to find out what type of returns you're going to have. And ultimately, the best way to determine that is I need to have a sit-down conversation and find out what the expectations that they're looking for to see if it's a fit. Because of security laws, if I'm meeting somebody for the very first time, I cannot present an offer to that individual because I don't have a pre-existing relationship. So we can talk, we can get to know each other, we can talk and discuss and explain the process, see if it's a comfort for the both of us. Because again, this is a partnership. So when I partner with somebody, I'm in a relationship with them for 10 to 20 years. So not all money is good money. We have to have compatible money, compatible relationships. So once we have a relationship that's established, at a future meeting, I can then present an offer. And then at that point, we're going to determine and discuss what type of returns and expectations they're looking for. And then once we have investors that put an investment of $100,000 or more into a deal, they'll get a piece of ownership in the deal. And that's huge. So in our deal structure, what that allows us to do is we're able to pay a fixed rate of return on their capital while it's in play. And then in 2 years, once we have remodeled the property, raised rents, lowered expenses, and we've improved the net operating income of the property, we're now going to refinance that property. We return all capital to investors, and then they still stay in the deal with their equity. So however much they initially wanted to contribute determines how much ownership they have. The more they put in, the more they have ownership of. And most of our investors, when they start off with, most of the time it's around $100,000 mark where they get a piece of equity and they're feeling it out. And that's totally understandable. Like, this is not the normal traditional investment, but what I've also found is the normal traditional investments like CDs, mutual funds, annuities, they don't perform.
Well,
I mean, it's just like, it's so frustrating because like we have a solution. It's like people are like so thirsty for water. It's like we have the solution, but it's an education process for us to get people across the board. There's like, how many more years do we have to be invested in those sectors, talking to our friends, family, and neighbors, and realize we're all in the same boat, that the retirement accounts haven't done anything in 15, 20, 25 years, and we can't retire.
And you know what, though? That's a whole show in itself, because we talked about, I think we might have talked about this last time, is that we've all been sold from the time, I remember from when the time I was 19 years old, I was working in some warehouse job or something like that. And the guys come in from some mutual insurance company or something like that and sell you on the whole concept of a mutual fund. And if you put aside this amount of money for 30 years, you'll have $1 million by the time you're 60. And when you're 19, you're like, wow, I'll be a millionaire. Yeah, I'll be super old, but yeah, I'll be a millionaire at 60 years old. But you're not thinking about that because you're currently 19.
Exactly. And it's just, what's so frustrating about that, when I go into a grocery store or into other stores, like, there are more and more seniors that are working these jobs at barely minimum wage. And literally, my heart breaks for them, knowing that they're not there because they want to be there. They're there because they have to be there. I was a firefighter paramedic for 15 years, and I've had more and more of our guys that are retiring with a pension going back to get full-time employment. Because what we weren't expecting is for the healthcare change. So now their pension, instead of covering the full salary, it's covering 65, 70% of what they made, depending on scenarios. But now they have to cover $1,200 a month in healthcare benefits. And we're the lucky ones that have a pension. Everyone else, doesn't have a pension. And like, when I got hired in the fire department, we have what's called deferred comp. It's a 457. It's like an IRA for firefighters and police. And my uncle was a police officer for the city of Cleveland, and he really was on me to start investing right off the gate, and I did. So I was investing about a third of my paycheck. So like, it was a pretty sizable contribution. And I would get these statements showing that, in 25, 30, 35 years, if the market does this, I will have this many millions of dollars. And I thought, like, I'm totally set. Well, when I left the fire department at 15 years of service to transition to space, I had about $130,000 in that account that was supposed to be worth millions halfway through my entire career. And that capital that was in there was essentially almost the money that I put into it by the time I went through 2 market crashes. And we're fed these lies of like, it's a paper loss. Baloney. The account just got cut in half. I have to get 100% return just to get back to where I'm at. And another thing that I've noticed, and this is truly heartbreaking for so many of my friends, family investors, is their mood is completely dictated by the stock market. When the stock market is great, they're having a great day. They're making plans and planning vacations in their head. Maybe we can replace the car that's 12 years old. And when the market pulls back, like, it destroys your mood. When you look at your account balance and you see it's got cut down $5, $10, $50,000, like, in your head, you're canceling all these plans. And then it's too much stress for somebody that needs to rely on that capital to keep it in the market. It's too risky.
That's why I love real estate, because there are no red days or black days. They're all green days, baby. They're all green days. And why I say that is because you're putting that money into a tangible physical asset that's been there, in some cases, 30 years, right? If you're buying a property a little bit older, it's been throwing off money since the first day it was finished, when it was built.
Sure.
It's been throwing off money the same. And so what's the chances of that building being around for another 10 years?
Absolutely. And like when people talk about the market crash of 2008, well, that was a totally different animal. Our stocks crashed pretty suddenly during that time. Single family homes really were affected, but the circumstances of that were loans were being lent to people that had no business lending. Like I was able to get loans on properties, no verification of income, and no physical appraisals. They literally drove by the house, looked at it, and appraised the property. So if we look at apartments during that time, they were a super safe investment. And the reason for that is because they're still generating cash. Our houses are valued upon our neighbors' houses, what they sold for. Off of, apartments are valued off the cash they produce. When we go through another recession, which we will, and it is coming, when people lose jobs, when divorces occur, when people are having to downsize their houses, typically they're going to apartments because it's an easier, it's a more affordable option. When people are actually graduating high school and looking to leave their house, they're going to apartments. When people are they're seniors and a single family house is too expensive and they can't afford a $5,000 a month assisted living, apartments are often a solution for that. So like we have all these various groups of people that keep going to apartments. And at the end of the day, we have to sleep at somewhere at night. So we've seen so many businesses that have been affected because of, Sears is going out of business and Blockbuster and so many of these other chains. That real estate can be a riskier asset. If Walmart leaves, who's going to fill a 200,000 square foot building? But when a tenant leaves, we have 700 square feet and we got a lineup of people that are looking to come in. So we have to really educate ourselves and question the advice that people give us. When people and our friends and our peers give us free advice, like that's risky, really take the time to evaluate their experience to provide that advice to you.
Yes. And that's the thing though, too. It's the lies you've been sold, right? That's what it is.
100%.
When I'm talking to investors, it's the same thing. They think that a building is risky. And when I remind them at the last crash, according to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, there was a 0.4% default rate on multifamily. It's 0.4 in a world where people are literally killing themselves because they lost everything.
Yeah.
Multifamily went down 0.4, and I would imagine that's because the small amount of people maybe over leveraged, maybe they couldn't operate it properly, maybe they're just in the wrong place at the wrong time when they bought it. Who knows?
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah. So this is an asset that people need, just as you pointed out, and more people are renting today. I think since 1964.
Exactly.
So there's definitely a market there, and part of it is just like I said, it's getting the word out in front and talking to people about it and educating people, but that it's an option. Most people that I speak to about this, it doesn't even come up as a thought. And you mean I can invest in something like that? Yeah, some people have no idea.
And just to speak at a couple of points, going back to 2008 when multifamily went down 0.4%, how much did our stocks go down? Because I, including everybody else, got cut in half during that time, but we still trust that. And then like oftentimes, a lot of my investors will go to a financial advisor. And there are some really amazing financial advisors out there. There are also financial advisors that also will make decisions based upon what's best for their pocketbook. And if you were to take capital away from a financial advisor to invest with us, we're going to provide a much higher rate of return. We're going to provide a higher safety factor, and they're going to be losing that business and future referrals. So it's not typically a place where we're going to get a lot of results and cooperating with that market. So just also keep in mind when you do talk to a financial advisor that sometimes the advice that you're being given is not always going to be the best advice based upon how their compensation is affected. And oftentimes the people will think that they're not qualified to be a private investor. A private investor is everybody around us, friends, families, and essentially the concept of it is they become the bank. The majority of the capital that we're able to raise comes from self-directed IRAs, and it comes through an education process of explaining people they have the option to do this. And realistically, most people don't know this option's available. So the IRS actually allows for this, that there's over 50 companies in the United States that are a self-directed IRA custodian. The account costs anywhere from about $100 to $500 to set up, and that allows you to transfer funds from your current IRA to a self-directed IRA, and then you're allowed to invest through real estate. You can buy your own apartment, you can buy a house, you can invest in an existing operator like deals that I currently have right now. You're able to invest in livestock, into notes. There's a bunch of other provisions that you can invest in. So most people don't know this option exists. And there is multiple different self-directed accounts that are available. You can actually even take a Roth IRA and you can convert that to a self-directed Roth IRA. There's about 8 or so different retirement accounts that you can convert over. So if you have access to retirement funds that are not really being deployed, or you're not raising the type of interest or the returns you're looking for, please reach out, and I'd love to be able to put you in connection with a few of these companies, and they can answer all the questions that you have. But there's just amazing opportunities.
You know what, though? And I think that's probably one of the problems with these, all these IRAs and all that, is when, again, thinking back when I was a young man getting started in the world of business, we were told to take money and just put it aside, and someone else is going to keep an eye on it.
Sure.
Someone else is going to make sure. It's not in their best interest to make sure that that account keeps increasing. It's up to us to make sure. And we're told, no, don't worry about it. Let them handle it. I'll take care of it. I won't even send you a bill for it. And they just take it out in fees, right?
Sure.
Right. I think what is required is that in order for people to build wealth, they have to be an active participant in doing it. And this is a great vehicle. Real estate is by far, and I've been on this planet for a little while now. This is by far the best vehicle I can possibly think of that'll get just like I said, any investor that we know around us into this business and help them build wealth. It's the only thing.
Absolutely. And I just want to question things further. Like Robert Kiyosaki in his book, Rich Dad Poor Dad, he really drove this point home with me, that the fact is we are taught nothing about financial education in middle school, high school, college. It's the one subject we all need in life. We can debate about geography. We can debate about aspects of history, and I value those subjects. But the subject of money is the one subject we all need to know and we know nothing about. And I really question why that is, because everything else in life, we have put a tremendous amount of effort into education. We're a society that really believes in higher education. We put a lot of emphasis on them. Then if we have such a strong emphasis on education, why don't we apply that also to our finances? Because to blindly just turn over our capital to a third-party individual, turn her back, and don't pay any attention to it until we're 65 is one of the worst decisions we can do. And again, I'm not knocking all financial advisors. Again, there are some amazing ones out there. But what I would like to ask you as the listeners, look at your current account balances. How much growth have you had over the last X number of years that you've invested? Do you have a balance that will allow you to live a comfortable life? And the way we can figure that out is, what's your monthly expenses? How much capital do you need to live? And let's say that's whatever, $2,000 a month, $3,000, $10,000, whatever the listener is. Does that account have the ability to sustain the lifestyle? And for how many years can that sustain it for? And if we were to talk to our friends, our family, our coworkers, the people around us, I think we would all find that where most of us are in the same position, where we don't really know what's going on, we don't really understand it, and we don't have enough money to sustain retirement. So it's a hard reality to look at, but until we can realize and focus on the problem, we cannot work on a solution. So I would just really, if anybody gets anything out of this podcast we're doing, question what's being taught to you and take the time and effort to take more financial responsibility of learning what our options are and what we're doing, because it literally will be the difference if you get to enjoy a retirement or if you're going to be working at a very undesirable position, job for many years. And I'm not speaking poorly for those that do that. My heart breaks for those people. And my job, really my passion, is to provide a means for a lot of people. And I've been able to do that for a lot of people, friends, families, referrals. I've been able to provide a solution to the retirement problems. And the feeling of that is far greater than anything else that I do in this business. I love having a great deal, but when I can solve a problem and provide a retirement and change a life for somebody, Like, I was a firefighter for 15 years. I had a lot of squad calls that I was on. We had some really horrible calls. We had some great calls. When you were able to intervene with somebody at that time and provide a solution and to provide safety, to save a life, like the feeling of that was just incredible. And in what we do today, we provide the same thing, but on a financial platform for people.
Excellent. Well, now shifting gears here, providing that solutions for people. I know you got a bunch of units under contract right now.
Yes.
How does a typical structure look like for an investor then? I think you mentioned something like, there's a minimum of 50K or something like that, but there's no equity. Maybe we can go into how that all works. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I do is I have no minimum investment. A lot of times people will. And the reason I do that is because I've had a lot of investors that have started off at 5, 10, 20, 50,000. And then once they see it, once they understand it, once they can visit the property and they're comfortable with it, then they're willing to invest a lot more. Because oftentimes what we all do is we all want everybody to agree with our decisions. Like we will go to our friends and family and we'll look for confirmation. And oftentimes we'll hear advice like, my brothers, sisters, cousins, third boyfriend had a rental property and lost money. Well, that's great. But like I've fallen off my bike learning to ride a bike. We've all made mistakes. I've crashed cars in the process of learning how to drive. Like mistakes are going to happen and that's the only way we learn. So people sometimes will still have that seed of doubt. So they're not wanting to fully commit and that's totally fine. So we don't have a minimum. If somebody puts a minimum of $100,000 into a deal, they will also get a piece of equity or ownership. And that piece of the deal is a game changer. The benefit of that is once we're done utilizing that investor's capital and we return that capital in a 24-month period or less through their equity, through the ownership of the deal, they will still stay in the deal. So let's say if somebody owned 1%, 5%, 10% of the deal, whatever the case is, let's just say 5% to make things simple here. They would get 5% of the rents moving forward without having any capital in the deal. They would have 5% of any future refinance proceeds we would get. And how we would get that in say like year 10, we go to get a new loan. 10s have been paying the mortgage off for 10 years. So we have built a lot of equity in the property simply just through the principal paying off, even if the property doesn't appreciate. So they would get a portion of that. And then when the day comes and we go to sell the property, we're going to have a large profit to capture. When that happens, they're going to get a percentage of that. So they get to continue to make returns with no money being in the deal. And it's not too good to be true. We've got plenty of case studies and plenty of properties we've done that we could provide this for. And it's an amazing opportunity. And most importantly, you're not riding the ups and downs of the stock market.
That's right. It's consistent cash. How do you deliver? Is it quarterly, I'm guessing?
Yeah. So when somebody has their capital invested in the deal for the first 24 months, we're making the interest payments on a monthly basis. And then once we turn the corner and we've returned all capital, and now they're making returns through the ownership of the property, that's being paid per quarterly. And what we'll do is we'll send out a statement of all the income that we received, all the expenses that were paid out, what was left to have complete and total transparency. During that time too, we also have our investing ownership partners. They're also included in our operating agreement. So they're listed in our operating agreement as an owner with a percentage, and they have no liability. I'm holding liability on the property so that if there was a slip and fall or something like that, we have insurance for that. But all of those headaches, all those challenges are my problem to deal with because I'm the majority owner of the property.
That's probably one of the biggest differences too. It's like there's people that want to own real estate, but then all the headaches and all the exposure is not there anymore. They're still a partner in the deal, but you as the GP, the general partners, is dealing with all the day-to-day.
Sure.
Some things aren't always fun. It's not always sunshine and unicorns and cotton candy. It's some days suck in this business, and someone's got to deal with it.
They do. You're right, and we deal with it all. We deal with finding the deal, putting earnest money down, performing due diligence, getting the loan, getting the insurance, putting the marketing together, closing on the property. Then we take over all the construction, remodeling, turning over the tenants, leasing, management, repairs. We put literally collectively thousands of hours into that property. And once we've got everything tightened up at that point, then the properties are generally very, very solid, minimal phone calls at that point, but there's thousands of hours that go into it before then. So it allows our partners to be able to have a completely passive position to do what they currently do, but at the same time, they can make much higher returns than they'll ever make in any other investment. I don't want to say any other investment. There's some things you can stumble across that are credible, but if you're looking for a consistent, proven, low risk investment, it really doesn't get much better than this.
Yeah, and you didn't even talked about the tax benefits yet. I mean, the tax benefits are huge. The good thing about this is that there's all the cost segregation, which I'm assuming you're doing on some of these bigger ones anyway. All these different things that still pass through to everyone of the partners. It's just awesome.
Exactly. So if somebody is investing through a self-directed IRA, all the returns and gains that you make, they are not taxed until you withdraw your IRA like any other standard investment. If somebody were to invest with cash or money that they had liquid, then we would have to issue a K-1 form. So they would have to pay income on that. But that income is being offset by the depreciation of the property. Because in real estate, we have physical items of property that we get to write off over a 39-year period, and which is depreciation because our cabinets, appliances, flooring, those items are wearing out. So we get the benefit of depreciation. So by the time we take depreciation with our income that we're making, they generally closely wash out, and we don't have to deal with that until we go to sell the property many years later.
Nice. So as far as your reporting and things like that is concerned, so you're still doing that on a quarterly basis as well? Like how do you handle that? Is you just do it at the same time you're doing distributions or what?
Yeah, so we're typically providing both those at the same time. Oftentimes, my newer investors will have more questions, and they're available to contact us any day of the week. They're welcome to come out to the property. We provide the lockbox codes because somebody investing for the first time is going to have more questions, and they naturally want to get comfortable. And I want to assist them as helpful as we can be to get them fully to the point where they're fully comfortable. And if somebody doesn't have the time, they don't want to come out, that's no problem. But if they do want to come out, we're going to fully accommodate those needs. And it comes down to education and transparency. The more I can do to educate our investors on what we do, how we do it, oftentimes we're going to do a much better job of getting everybody comfortable with it. And again, everything comes down to education.
Yeah. So now, how are you finding these people though? So getting in front of them and educating them is one thing, but how are you actively getting out there and getting the word out about what you're doing? How's that taking place today?
Exactly. So we're reaching out to our current friends and family, our warm market of people that have known me for my entire life, to know the integrity, the honesty, the track record of what I've done and what I've been able to do. Because that's going to be the people that are going to be, most interested initially. Is people are going to invest in the person first before they invest in the opportunity. Secondly, what we're also pursuing is we're going to RIA clubs. We're going to our network and asking if they know of people, friends and family that are looking for the opportunities. We're also trying to really push a heavy marketing campaign to educate on the self-directed IRA piece, because for most people, that's the easiest way for them to be investing into one of these opportunities is through a self-directed IRA. So it comes down to putting in a lot more effort and providing a lot more consistency. I just brought somebody on board in my team, another full-time position, and his full-time job is to raise capital. So it's a combination. Again, how do we find deals? We put a ton of effort into it. How do we find contractors? We put a ton of effort into it. And same thing with this also.
So this guy that you just brought on, then they're going out making phone calls. Like, are they doing like cold calls, that kind of thing, or what are they doing?
Yeah, the cold calling, reaching out to people that have reached out to us, putting together emails to send out to our current investor database, increasing our current database, reaching out to self-directed IRA companies and asking if we can present not an offer, because we can't do that. But what we'd like to do is be able to prevent something similar to this, to educate individuals on how they can possibly deploy some of their retirement funds into an apartment deal, whether it be ours or theirs or somebody else's. The more I can do to educate people on what the options are available, it's just the more options. And, I think everybody wins in the end if we could just give.
Yeah. And I think, to put everything together, it really comes down to what you said right at the beginning was the operator, the team. They've been there. You have your team of, I think you said 15, 16 people, but they're all sharing that same vision. They all know where you want to go. And I think that's a big part of it, is that when you have a fiduciary responsibility to those investors. And with everyone on the team aware of it, that's critical to not only delivering on that promise, but also making sure that the investors get what you promised them, because that's everything, right?
Absolutely. Like when we raise capital, it is a huge responsibility. I take it very seriously, the responsibility that's been given to me. I'm investing some of these retirement funds that have taken upwards of sometimes 30, 40 years to put together. And I will never put their capital at risk. We have a lot of safeties and checks and balances in order to protect that capital. Like for example, when we run the construction on the job site, we will provide all the material so that way we can get the lowest prices. But there's no possibility of giving a contractor a check for half down and then they just leave the state. I provide the material, it's sitting there. We bring the contractor in. He doesn't get compensated until the job's done. So I'm not going to put myself or the investor's capital in a position where we're going to write a check and it's going to disappear. We're going to hold the project in budget. And if for any reason, when we go to refinance a project, and let's say for some reason we were slightly short in paying an investor off, I would simply pay the investor off with the cash flow from my proceeds, cash flow that I have from other properties. And I've got a lot of single family homes at this point, which are my foundation that I've got paid off. And if I had to sell a property, I would. If I had to work in McDonald's third shift, I would. Like I literally will do anything necessary to ensure and make sure there's a return of capital. Again, it goes back to track record and integrity. And if you have that piece and we're buying the right deals at the right price points, it's really going to eliminate a lot of that risk through the knowledge we have too.
Yes, that's right. That's right. And that's the thing though, you're spending that extra time to underwrite the deal, make sure it's a good deal to begin with. And if there's a screw up, and there are, hey, things happen.
For sure.
And not every single quarter is going to be a record-breaking return. That's not how this business works. Roofs fail, we need a new roof, boiler breaks, whatever. But as long as you're delivering on that promise, that's ultimately what makes a really good operator. And if you don't, things get found out fairly quickly anyway.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. It's an amazing business for people to get involved in. It comes down to educating. And people will often ask me too, how do you know that you can raise the value of the building enough and return my capital? And the answer is this. When we go to look at a deal, my team and I, through our experience, we will first initially underwrite it and make sure that we have the ability to raise the rent enough, lower the expenses enough to be able to raise the value of our net operating income. The higher our net operating income, the more the property is worth, which allows us to be able to get a new loan at a higher dollar amount and return capital to investors. So we initially will underwrite it. I will then send it to our broker that we've been working with. I'll just put a plug in for him. He's incredible. Chris Litzler with Pinnacle Finance. They were recently acquired, his company, by Marcus and Millichap. They finance over $1 billion in loans per year. So I have the experience of that team that's also underwriting it in a very conservative manner. They will then send it out to our bridge lenders, and they will also underwrite it. So I have at any point in time probably 20 individual sets of eyes that would be looking at that property and verifying our income, our expenses, and if they're comfortable with it. And if they're not comfortable with what we're projecting, we don't get the loan on it, because they also are in a position that they need to make sure we can raise the value enough that we can refinance and put permanent debt in place. So there's multiple safety checks in place to make sure that we're actually able to have achievable rents, achievable expenses, again, just as another safety precaution for investors.
Yes. You know what? When you're in this business, you really got to know what you're doing. This is not for the faint of heart, nor is it for the beginner that just got a couple duplexes and now wants to, own 100 units.
Absolutely. So, really, we're looking to partner up with different people. We're looking to invest with partners that want to get into the space. If they can assist with us, I'm willing to mentor them, to take them along and give them the mentorship in that process. And then I've got probably the bigger portion of my investors that they just want to be passive. They're at a point, they've worked really hard, they put capital aside, and they want to enjoy life. And I would really, really highly recommend for all of us to be able to have that awareness of balance and work and in a personal life, our families, because our time here is short. Again, going back to, I was a firefighter paramedic. There have been a lot of calls that I had been on where that person had no intentions of dying that day. They had no intentions of getting into that car accident. They never had intentions of anybody calling us that day. but we just don't know what life has ahead of us. So we all want to plan for the future, which is why we have to make these financial decisions now. But secondly, we also have to make sure that we're having those experiences, that we're having the time with our family, that we have the financial capability to maybe spend less time working a part-time job and being with our family and being involved while we can, because we take a lot for granted. But at the end of the day, I think taxes and death are two only guarantees that we have in life.
That's right. And you know what, though, Jack? It's like you hit the nail on the head. Our time here is short. And the one thing that I have found in my short time here so far on this planet is that certainty of real estate. If you invest in the right asset to throw off that cash month over month, quarter over quarter, year over year, there's nothing else like it. Everything else is a gamble. Your mobile app is a gamble.
Yep.
The pizza place you want to open is a gamble. It's all just a gamble. You don't know.
Exactly. I've had a lot of investors that are investing in marijuana stocks hoping for a home run. And some of those will be home runs. Most people are going to lose a lot of money. As marijuana becomes legalized throughout the states and commercial dispensaries come in, and we have an offset in supply and demand, and now we have a lot more supply than we have demand, the price of those products didn't come down. So just because there's going to be more of a need for a product doesn't mean that's going to be a safe investment. Yeah. And at the end of the day, when we invest and we make high returns and we invest our capital wisely, it allows us to trade money for time. We can all make more money. We can't get any more time, though. When we can safely invest our capital to generate cash flow, to generate higher returns, that's going to minimize the amount of years that we have to work. And the more years, the more time that we can minimize, the more time that we can spend doing the things we should have been doing a long time ago. Spending time with family, going on trips, enjoying life before we're at a point that we don't get to enjoy that.
100%. 100%. All right, guys. If you want to follow up with Jack, you can reach out to him at petrickpropertygroup.com. So much value in this discussion. Man, thank you so much for your time. Great having you on again. Appreciate it.
If you don't mind, if I could just leave my phone number for listeners.
Sure. Yeah. Go ahead.
I'm more than happy. My cell phone number, I'll repeat this a couple times here, is 440-552-8483. And I'll repeat that a couple more times here for those searching for a pen right now, because I've done it before too. 440-552-8483.
And I'll put in the show notes too.
That's great. Love to reach out, call me, text me. We have some deals that we're closing in about 4 weeks. And if you think that you'd be interested to learn more, again, I would first have to build a relationship before we can make an offering, because we're just going to stay compliant and legal. But again, if all you're looking for is to just become more educated, to learn about it, and all you want to do is ask a few questions, I'm totally available for that too.
Awesome. All right, guys, reach out to Jack. He's a good guy.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed the Bulletproof Cashflow podcast. For more free podcasts, articles, videos, and resources, go to www.bulletproofcashflow.com.